Hello and welcome to WCS Sports Connection. My name is Jeremy Qualls, and I have a guest with me today that I'm happy to be here, Mr. Tate Matthews. How are you doing today, Tate?
I'm doing well. I appreciate you inviting me.
Good. I'm happy that you're here. He is the host of the High School Sports Saturday Show on 104.5 The Zone, also owner of Matthew Team Sports. Tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I appreciate it. Grew up here, moved here when I was 16, grew up in Knoxville. A lot of you all know my dad, Tate Mathews, and he came here to coach 1 year at Vanderbilt, and then he left. I guess was caught in a transition, left, didn't know what he was going to do. That was going to be my senior year of high school, and he ended up buying a sporting goods business, Tate Matthews Team Sports. We've been doing it since '91, and then a few years ago, my brother and I bought it from him. So been doing that, been very involved in the high school sports scene for the past 20 years. And 3 years ago, we started a radio show on 104.5 The Zone, High School Sports Saturday. Just, there's so much interest in high school sports. You might be a Tennessee fan, might be an Alabama fan. We're not going to agree on that, but everybody, and maybe not be any college sports fan, but everybody's got a grandson and uncle and aunt that wants to watch that nephew or whatever. Everybody's interested in high school sports. We thought we could put more emphasis on it, and that's kind of what we've done, and we think it's been well received.
Well, you got to think, we have 8 high schools here. Metro has 9 or 10, and then the Rutherford County area has 7. That's a lot of high schools for this listening area, not including the rural schools. So you can imagine the following that you have on Saturday mornings, and I was very privileged and humbled for you to be asking me to be on that show, and very enjoyable. And I know that the listening audience is vast, because I had a lot of people that commented on me sounding like a country guy from Hickman County. But I appreciate the fact that you have me on that show, and I'm glad that you're with us today. We're going to talk about the games of the week from August the 22nd. We had a full slate of games here in WCS. We're going to start with the Brentwood Cpa game, which I think you have a little bit of knowledge about because you were actually at that game.
That's right.
So what did you see?
Well, it was, you hate it for Brentwood High. Coach Woodward's in his second year at Brentwood, and he's no stranger to Williamson County. He was obviously on Brian Rector's staff at Ravenwood when they won the state championship. He was actually the offense coordinator on that staff. So, you hate to use rebuilding, but that's kind of really where Brentwood is. The year before he got here, I think they had 31 seniors. So a tough schedule. CPA, that's a tough one to open up with.
Sure.
They're the class of outside Alcoa 3A. So, they're young, first game, but, they just ran into a really good CPA team. Looked like they fought, but just a tough matchup for them. But again, you can see where they've got some light at the end of the tunnel. They've got some good young players, and they just need to stick with him because he's doing the right stuff.
Well, I know the final score of 31-10 probably wasn't evident of how the game went. I think that the score at halftime and at the end of the first and midway through the second was a pretty tight contest,
right.
Was it not?
Yeah.
So then the second half, it kind of opened up a little bit towards
right.
CPA.
Got hot. Which it was hot. Just sitting there, you were,
sure.
I know you were at another game, but just sitting out there, as a spectator, you were sweating. And CPA, they spread it out, but it's a rushing attack out of the spread. They got a really good player by the name of Jay Hockaday. People from around here might remember Jimmy Hockaday from the 80s. Played at Brentwood Academy and then went on to play with Herschel Walker at Georgia. That's his son. Really good player. So they kept it tight, but they got a little tired, and then that rushing attack kind of got them. So. Well,
what were some of the highlights possibly from the Brentwood side of things? Did we open it up and throw the ball a little bit? Did we run the ball pretty decently on some things? What was something that you saw that we could take away from the Brentwood side of things and say, it's going to be okay?
Well, the Croy youngster, the quarterback, I think this one's Cameron Croy. Carson's his older brother, right. Great wrestler that went up to Harvard. Just had an unbelievable career here at Brentwood, but he got better. This it's the first game, week 0, so you could tell he got a little more comfortable in the second half. Completed some good passes. They had good things going. It just they never really got a complete full drive out of it, but you could see highlights. So it got better as the game went on, but I would say that's the number one highlight is he looked like he grew a little bit.
Well, that's good. And I know that that we'll talk a little bit later about their upcoming schedule, which looks like a gauntlet. If you ask anybody in high school football that knows what's going on here lately, that their schedule is not too favorable.
No.
But maybe that'll help them in the long run towards the end if they were to maybe get a win or two out of that, or just learn from what's going on with that out-of-district schedule.
Unfortunately, if it's not the toughest schedule in the state, it's the second toughest schedule in the state, which we had him on earlier in the summer, Coach Woodward, and he said that last year, I don't know who ranks it, but he said last year they actually were ranked the toughest schedule in the state. Well, it's just, we're in 2-year contracts, which so it's the same schedule. I got to think it's the the toughest again this year.
Well, apparently so. Since 2 of the next 3 opponents that they have was on ESPN on a particular Sunday, I would say that it looks pretty difficult.
Yes.
But moving on down the list, Centennial came in playing a Northeast team out of Clarksville and played really, really well. Looks to me like they had their defense played well. They shut their offense, Northeast offense, down to 95 yards for the total game. Won 41-7. Of course, we have some high-profile players in this game. We have none other than Deion Sanders. What a great namesake he is, prime time. And, of course, Emmanuel Hall, the Missouri commitment. What do you know about the Centennial game?
I know Coach Rector was very pleased with the way they played. The first thing that jumped out at me, and actually had him on and talked to him about it, but the thing that jumped out at me was last year to win those games, they were giving Deion Sanders the ball 30, 32, 34, sometimes 40 times a game. He was rushing for 330 yards. I don't think he touched it, but 14, 15 times.
Wow.
Which that's good. That shows there's a little bit more balance on the offensive side. Obviously, anytime you got Emmanuel Hall, that kid is, if you've seen him, if there's a look test, he passes at 100%, very explosive. I think he's got a 39-inch, 40-inch vertical.
I think the actual on record was 41-inch.
41-inch. That's pretty good.
230.
You can combine ours, and it's still not 41 inches.
That's pretty amazing. Now he finished the game with 81 total yards. Maybe not on paper it did look fantastic, but when you go in and you beat a team 41-7, people fail to forget that maybe the plays towards the second half changed to the fact that we didn't need him, or possibility of the game was in already pretty much in hand, so we didn't have to press the issue about getting the Emmanuel ball. But in the third quarter, to open the third quarter, he had a 45-yard catch, which probably was spectacular. So, is there any more
stats
that you have?
The thing that I think he would be happiest with. The happiest thing is the defense holding him down to 100 yards. Because if you remember, Northeast was in the semifinals last year. Now they graduated some kids, but if you know anything about Clarksville Northeast, they have athletes every year. And so that's the thing I think he would be happiest with, is that holding them to under 100 yards total offense. And remember, they played their young pups on defense probably the whole fourth quarter, or at least half. But I believe the young man's name is Owen Roth, the quarterback. 10 for 13 for 123 yards, 1 touchdown. That's almost 80% completion. So, like you were talking about, when you got Deion Sanders and then you got a guy like Emmanuel Hall, hey, if he's managing the game, which that's what Coach Rector wants, and that's obviously what he did, Centennial, I think this is going to be a really good year for them.
I get that feeling too. Of course, we had Coach Rector on the show a few weeks ago, and he was talking about his team. Of course, Coach Rector's being humble, but I've been out on practice and watching them practice and seeing their skill set, seeing their skilled players out on drills, and I'm thinking like you that Centennial could be a sleeper team this year for some. For whatever reason, sleeper, but in my opinion, going in, they ought to be a favorite in looking predominantly at their schedule. So I look forward to seeing what Centennial does this year.
Yep, and he is a. We got a lot of good coaches in this county. It's a lot of good coaches, and he is a. If you know anything about him, he has a philosophy and a belief set there, and he's really good at getting those kids to buy into that. And he really feels like this year's team really buys into what they're teaching and preaching. And so if that happens, they're going to compete every Friday night too.
Well, he mentioned that on the coaching preview show. He was talking about getting the kids to buy into every play, regardless if the play goes your way or not, that we're buying in and doing our jobs and trying to get the kids to understand the importance of assignments. And it does not matter if you're on the pro level, the college level, high school level, that your assignments are extremely important, and everybody plays a role in that. And he through video study and through practice and being hard-nosed, I think that the kids, like you said, have bought into the system. And I look forward to seeing the success that Centennial will have this year. Moving on, Franklin High School had the bye,
Yeah.
And on Friday of the 22nd, their first game will be August 29th, and looking forward to seeing how Coach Webb and them do against Northeast, the Northeast team. But Fairview played and played out of the district again as well, and they played against a Cheatham County team, won 27-21. I think this is another case where the score doesn't indicate. I think that Fairview led the majority of the game pretty big, and then Cheatham County kind of put together a little run towards the end.
Yeah, and that's if you remember, Cheatham County's had a really good football team the past couple of years. So
right.
I think Chris Hughes has done as good of a job as anybody. That's not to say that, Coach Hester and Coach Blake, I mean, they've all done really good jobs. But what he's done at Fairview High School, the excitement level that he's brought to that program the last few years, he's done an unbelievable job. Cheatham County's a good football team, and so that was a good win. I don't think it was as close as that score you just mentioned was for the reasons you did. And we got a lot. We talked about it earlier. We got a lot of big time players here. Sometimes there's big time college recruits, and then there's what I really like, and there's just great high school players.
Right.
And it seems like Fairview's had that. And then they have a quarterback who is going to be recruited, but maybe not like Van Jefferson. That Hunter Zimmerman young man at quarterback, he's fun to watch, and they're wide open, and they get after it. And again, he's one. If you're looking for somebody, kind of like the Mizell kid was at Page last year, if you're looking for someone fun to watch, the Fairview quarterback Zimmerman, he's one of them.
Well, the Fairview team is going to predominantly take in a different looking team versus let's say a Centennial. Like you said, the glitz and the glamour, the skilled players, maybe not so much. It's going to be more hard-nosed football, maybe a little pound and ground, one of those things that may be a little different set, maybe not. They may throw some as well. But the overall look of the team is a little different than our traditional Centennial, if you will. And I think that's what they hang their hat on. And they're going to go into these games. They're going to be very, very strong, very hard-nosed kids, gutsy kids that will probably not blow assignments or attempt not to blow assignments every game. They led this game 27-7 with 6 minutes to go, and had to hang on for a 6-point win. Cheatham County was knocking on the door there on the 5-yard line as time expired. So, I'm sure they're going to look at that and pick that apart a 1,000 different directions and talk about, it's great to come out of the gates hot, but you always have to finish a game. And the sophomore Hunter Caldwell, he had 24 carries and 133 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, that's a pretty good game for him as well.
Oh, yeah.
So,
and again, they're doing it, that's kind of the fad right now. They're doing it out of the spread. He's been doing it, since he's been there. But just because you're in a spread doesn't mean you can't run the football.
That's right. Moving on, Andy took on Kenwood this week, and that was another large win for WCS, 42-7. It seems like the wins that we had were large, either at one point in time of the game or they finished with a big win. And they won 42-7 over another Clarksville team out of Kenwood.
Yep, another athletic team. And Kenwood's well coached. They got Brian Bobby is the head coach up there. He's going to have a plan, and they're going to be organized. But I think Coach Blades, everybody knows who he is. That was a home run hire when Dr. Campbell was able. He kind of don't want to take the credit away from him. He got him and sold him on him, but he kind of fell into him. It was just meant to be, I think. But it's neat. This team, I don't think that game was ever close. And it's they had such high-profile players last year, in Vic Wharton, the third, and Rashawn Galden. But this year's team, he's been there 2 years now. Maybe not quite as explosive, but his line's better. He played with a young line last year. It looks like they're better, and they're one of the ones up there with Ravenwood and Centennial and Franklin that I think are favorites.
It's Coach Rector alluded to the fact when he was here that we're going to really find out whether we're just a mediocre conference or we're really good.
Yeah.
And I really tend to think that the week of August 22nd kind of gave us a little snapshot that we have 3 or 4 teams that may be able to compete, well, pretty much anyway, with Independence being one of those. That's and right. Centennial. And the next team that we're going to speak about is Ravenwood. Yeah. Ravenwood came out of the gates 28-0 in the first quarter and was 56-0 at half. And then this kind of just cruised to a victory of 56-14. And I know that Stewart's Creek kind of scored late, but we want to talk about some glitz and glamour. We have a kid there, Van Jefferson, that is magnificent and is an unbelievable player. He had 2 touchdowns. And looking at on Monday, August the 25th, the word on the street is that he's going to commit. Do you know anything about that?
The way I think it's going to happen, unless something changes, he is obviously he can go just about anywhere in the country he wants to. For a long time, it's been really 3 schools: Ohio State, Tennessee, and University of Georgia. University of Florida kind of came in there a couple of weeks ago and kind of was maybe a top 4, I think. But I really think that it's down to 3, and unfortunately there's good and bad with all of them. And, that's a tough choice. We would have liked to have had an offer from one. He's got an offer from all 3. But the way I think it's going to happen is he's going to, after practice, a small group of friends and teammates and family and friends of the family and people that work at Ravenwood, I think they're going to meet in the auditorium, and I think he's going to reveal it then. Again, I think it's down to Georgia and Tennessee. And a few weeks ago, I would have told you Ohio State, but I would say it's down to those 2.
Well, he had 2 touchdowns on that August 22nd game against Stewart's Creek and played well. I know that everybody here locally would probably love for him to stay in the SEC, including myself. But I wish him and his family the best of luck with that decision. I know that that's going to be something that's going to be exciting and at the same time a little bit anxiety in it. But I wish those folks the best of luck. Last game on the schedule the other night was Summit and Spring Hill. I was at that game. Summit's trying to still look for their first home win. And there was some excitement going around. I'm going to tell you right now, I went to the pep rally that day. Their culture and environment at Summit is fantastic. Yeah. I mean, the Spartan Nation was out. The kids were great. They had they were packed in there that night. The kids came out, and it just, unfortunately, just fell a little flat. They couldn't get anything going off the bat. When you run that type of offense, he runs a little bit of the wing tee offense, and it's a lot of ground control and clock maintenance and whatnot. If the only con to that is if you never can get on the board and kind of fall behind, then you're forced to do some things that may be a little bit out of your comfort zone. And they just couldn't quite get anything going. Defensively, they looked really, really well the first quarter and even into the second quarter, but they gave up a little bit of a long run there, and it kind of deflated. It took the wind out of the sails, if you will. And then they just never did recover, down 35-0. Well, we're going to take a break right here. When we come back, we're going to look at the games of the week for August 29th. Stay with us.
My book is Where the Sidewalk Ends. I like this book because the poems in it are really funny, and I like the illustrations, and they make me laugh.
Welcome back to WCS Sports Connection. I'm Athletic Director Jeremy Qualls. This is Tate Matthews with me. We're going to start a second segment with the win of the week of August the 22nd. And to me, it stands out pretty easily what the win of the week was, and that was the Page win over Lipscomb, 24-10. What do you know about that game, Tate?
I agree with you 100%. There was a lot of good wins this week, but that one was a big one. If you remember last year, I can't remember the exact score, but Page went to Lipscomb, and it was 61-50-something, 62-49, over 1,000 yards in offense. It was, I think it was the highest scoring game of the year last year, but Lipscomb ended up getting that win. Big win for them. I come short on the young man's name. You're replacing Zach Mizell, the quarterback for Page last year. Little Johnny Football is kind of what nickname he had, and he was fun to watch. But Coach Rathbone's been telling people for 2 years, and again, his name escapes my memory, but I'll remember it. He's got a heck of a quarterback coming, and you saw that on Friday night. Anytime you get a win over Lipscomb Academy, David Lipscomb, sure. It's still hard for me not to call David Lipscomb.
Exactly.
But Lipscomb Academy, that's a good win.
That goes back to Coach McAdams in the days
of
nobody could beat Lipscomb. And regardless of who's coaching there now, that trademark, that branding of Lipscomb is there. And anytime you can get a win over those guys is a quality win. And we want to congratulate Coach Rathbone for the win of the week on that, and a fantastic win for those guys to start the season.
That's right. Any win over Lipscomb's good. A 2-touchdown win, really good.
Really good. So we're going to look forward to the games of the week coming up on August the 29th. We're looking at the first game of the week, and this goes back to what we were speaking to earlier, Tate. Hardest schedule in the country. And we have Brentwood versus Blackman.
Yep.
And on Sunday of August the 26th, Blackman and Murfreesboro Oakland played on ESPN. So Brentwood is going to be traveling to Blackman, who beat that team to start off the year 1-0.
Yeah, ESPN2 actually, but it was a nationally televised game. Yeah, you're right. Blackman defeated Oakland 28-21 in that game, and I don't know exactly how many SEC commits are on Oakland's team. I know there's 4. How many they'll end up having? I mean, they look like, if you see them, they look like a college team.
Right.
Unfortunately, Blackman looks like a college team too. Juwan Jennings, #1 prospect in the state. So the good thing Brentwood has, if there's a positive coming out of that, and you know, I mean, it's just like I said, they're in a rebuilding thing. The good thing is they played on Sunday, so it's a short week. Maybe they'll be tired. Maybe they got beat up. But again, you know, Coach Woodward's going to have a plan. They know what to do. It's just that's going to be a tough game for them. But again, you know, let's go into it and try to get better. And what really matters is this district schedule.
And then they turn around and play Oakland. You know, so you know, the Brentwood has got a really, really tough road, even before we get into deep into the district play and playing other WCS teams. So Brentwood, once again, will be playing Blackman at Murfreesboro Blackman on Sunday the 29th. Excuse me, Friday the 29th.
Yeah. It's going to be tough, but hey, you know, you show up and you play. And
that's what you do.
Again, you know, I don't know, I'm not a coach. You were. You know, I would think this is one of those games where let's go out there, let's try to get better, let's compete, let's play hard, and get something out of it. And let's just be better after that game than we were before. I think that's what you take out of it.
Yeah, some of those games, I mean, it's like I used to tell my assistant coach, it's like when you get on the bus, there's the Imperial Death March from Star Wars playing in the background, because all we're going to do is go show up. You know, we had when I was at Lexington, we had Bolivar, Liberty Tech, Southside. In your non-conference games were Dyer County and Milton, which all have state championships to their name. So, I mean, it's just like some nights are better than others.
That's right.
But you get yourself up and you fight and you don't bow down. So, anyway, the next game would be Centennial at Nashville Overton. You know anything about Overton?
I do. They lost a tough one to Crosstown's not the word. You know, right around the block rival Father Ryan.
Right.
The Father Ryan Overton game, as rivalry's been going on for a long time. They would take that one serious and lost a tough game to Father Ryan, 29-24, I believe. Father Ryan's really good. They'll pick one of those big D2 schools off this year. So loaded with a lot of athletes. They got a young man named. This is what I'm looking forward to. They've got a Ole Miss commit, Ugo Amati. He's one of the top cornerback prospects in the state, maybe in the Southeast. So just like you talked about earlier, they don't make them much better in Emmanuel Hall. I got to think we're going to see Ugo Amati one-on-one with Emmanuel Hall. That's going to be fun to watch if you're into that. You know, if you're into those one-on-one matchups.
We're seeing it now, and we'll see it for the next 4 years, obviously, in the SEC. So that would be interesting.
Yeah.
It's a great matchup to look for.
Yes.
That would be
At all those, I think they're all good games, but that one, if you're looking for a good game, that's one that I would be very interested in seeing.
And once again, that is Centennial at Overton.
That's right.
Next game on the slate would be Franklin having their season opener and home opener versus Northeast, who also came in this past week and lost in Centennial. So Northeast would be coming in 0-1 in this game. So, you know, Franklin hopefully getting out of the gates fast this year.
Well, the good is I'm assuming they were in attendance at that game. It's Centennial. So I would think that they were there, got a good look at them. You know, they know Centennial, and they also got to get a good look at Centennial too, so that was good for them. A little bit fresher, maybe now Northeast has a game under their belt. Franklin doesn't, but like I said, they got to get a good look at them, another week of practice to get better. But, you know, Donnie Webb's known as a defensive guy, and he's one of the best there is. But it's funny, since he's been the head coach there, they've had some really good offenses. And Joe Critchlow, the senior quarterback, he's a really good player and going to be a senior. So I would think Northeast is probably in trouble in that game.
Next on the slate would be Indy at Marshall County. Marshall County won big over Shelbyville this past week. They're coming in 1-0. So, that's an interesting matchup. It's outside the conference and kind of getting into the rural side of things too, going down to Marshall County, which has a history of being pretty good in football. So that should make for an interesting matchup.
Yeah, and you would know as well as anybody being at Marshall County. Marshall County, one thing, they're going to have athletes. They got a brand new head coach, Thomas Osteen, young guy. He's a Louis Thompson guy out of Lincoln County. And people a lot smarter than me think he's going to be a really, really good coach. I tell you, I did not get to see it. They've got a young man named Chris Walker. He scored 3 touchdowns against Shelbyville on the offensive side, had 11 tackles and returned a 90-yard interception for a touchdown. So they have at least one big-time player on that team.
Chris has strong genes and DNA. His father was a great player, same thing. Yeah. So we have Ravenwood at Clarksville. Clarksville won big, 1-0. They're coming in 1-0 over Good Pasture. Yep. And it's kind of like the Lipscomb thing, anytime you win over Good Pasture. Right. So that'll be an interesting. Clarksville will have some natural athletes in there as well, matching up. Be interesting to see how Van carries his career on into his senior year on into Clarksville. And then Summit travels to Page. Of course, Page with the big win over Lipscomb. I hope, for the sake of our county, that is a good natural game there, that the game flow goes back and forth. It's not so one-sided. What do you think?
I think it's a tough matchup for Summit, just like what you talked about. It's kind of unfair sometimes. You see a smaller school against a bigger school, and so you think they ought to. That's not always the case. Right. Like we just said, Page has got a really good team. And like you said, I think the key to that is what Coach Coleman's doing is the right stuff. He's been with some really good people. He knows what he's doing, but you can't get behind in that offense. So that's the key to Summit, and I guess that's the key to Page too. If they can get up on them early, that really plays in their favor.
Yeah, and I look forward to seeing that little matchup. You were talking about, Coach Coleman having some Marshall County ties. As we're speaking about Marshall County, and Spring Hill's head coach was Tricetta, who also had coached at Marshall County and at Forest. So Marshall County has some ties here in the county. Lastly is Fairview at Camden, which is interesting because that's their first district opener, and it's a huge game for Fairview to go to Camden, who had a big win over South Gibson this past week. So I hope that Fairview can make that long journey over to Camden, across the river, and start off 1-0 in that district.
I think you're right. I think that's and if you know much about that part of the state, that's a hard place to play. I mean, they really do have a home field advantage. They're not real friendly to the people, and they really don't like Williamson County schools as much either. So tough place to play, but like I said, I think what they've got going at Fairview is really good.
Well, when we get to basketball season, Tate, I have a fantastic story about Camden when they were in the district with Lexington as I was coaching, but that's for another day. Well, thank you so much for being here, Tate. This has been a great time. We look forward to talking about our next full slate of games on the next WCS Sports Connection. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm Jeremy Qualls, Athletic Director, and this is Tate Matthews.
When sharing the road, reaction time is important. Motorists should reduce their speed and avoid tailgating, especially in bad weather. When passing, they should leave at least 3 feet between their vehicle and the cyclist. Cyclists have the same rights and responsibilities as motorists. They should travel in the same direction on the right hand of the road and obey all traffic signals. Responsible cyclists care about the image they portray and are courteous to others with whom they share the road. Staying alert, sharing the road, and obeying traffic signals. Observing these rules provides predictability for both motorists and cyclists. Remember, same roads, same rules, same rights.